What if the life you built for years crumbled in a matter of moments? 8 years of love, trust, and shared dreams unraveled with one shocking revelation. Secrets came to light, alliances were tested, and justice demanded its due. But amidst the betrayal and heartbreak, I found something unexpected: strength, resilience, and the courage to rebuild. This is a story of loss, revenge, and ultimately, renewal. When I met Sabrina, it felt like I had discovered the missing piece of my puzzle. We were two visionaries, me, buried in labs perfecting material science, and her, immersed in the cutting-edge world of tech development. It wasn't just about love. It was a partnership of dreams. Over the past 8 years, we built a fortress together, brick by brick, dream by dream, marriage, a home filled with laughter, and someday, little feet running around. Our future was painted in vibrant colors, and honestly, I couldn't imagine anything that could dull its shine. But relationships are funny, aren't they? They often lull you into a sense of security just before tossing a curveball your way. I didn't see it coming. We had created this unshakable bond, or so I thought. Conversations were effortless, plans were mutual, and every milestone we hit felt like proof we were unbreakable. That's what made the cracks, when they started to appear, so invisible at first. And that's why the next part of the story still leaves me shaken. Looking back, maybe there were signs I ignored, tiny fissures that seemed insignificant at the time. But Sabrina? She was my everything. So when things started to shift, I didn't question it. I just chalked it up to life's pressures, thinking we'd find our way back to that perfect alignment we'd always shared. But life? Oh, it had different plans for us. It started like any other evening. A casual dinner, soft laughter, and Sabrina's animated stories about her latest project. But then her tone shifted. Her words, though measured, hit me like a freight train. She wanted one last adventure before we tied the knot. At first I thought she was joking. I even chuckled nervously, waiting for her to laugh and tell me it was all in jest. But the look in her eyes, it wasn't a joke. It was a request. My heart sank, but I forced myself to listen, to understand. Was this a pre-wedding jitters thing? A fleeting fantasy? I clung to the hope that it was something we could talk through, but her words kept echoing in my mind: freedom, exploration, and that insistent plea to not overthink it. Each one felt like a needle pricking at the foundation of everything we had built. I tried to stay composed, but the questions swirled in my head. Why now? What was missing? Did she not see what we had as enough? I nodded and listened, pretending to stay calm, but deep down, I was unraveling. Little did I know that conversation wasn't the beginning of a negotiation. It was the start of my descent into a reality I wasn't prepared for. It was Vanessa's message that opened Pandora's box. A cryptic text that read, "Are you okay? Heard about Sabrina and Luciano." My stomach nodded instantly. Who was Luciano? And why would Vanessa, usually reserved, reach out with something so loaded? Curiosity got the better of me, and I went digging. My hands trembled as I scrolled through Sabrina's phone, every swipe bringing a fresh wave of disbelief. There they were, messages between Sabrina and this man, Luciano, each more damning than the last. The words stung like acid. Flirtatious exchanges, inside jokes, and comments about their adventures. Sabrina didn't just hide her betrayal, she flaunted it, boasting to Luciano about her freedom. It was as if the Sabrina I knew had vanished, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. My mind raced, replaying every moment we shared, every promise she made. How long had this been happening? How could I have missed it? But the worst part, it wasn't just the betrayal, it was the casualness of it all. The way she spoke about me, about us. It was as if I was some obstacle she had conveniently forgotten about. My heart was in pieces, but amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. I couldn't ignore this. Confrontation was inevitable, but the question wasn't if, it was when. When I finally confronted Sabrina, the room felt colder than usual. She barely flinched as I laid the evidence before her. screenshots, timestamps, and the betrayal woven between them. Her reaction? Indifference. She shrugged as if caught in a minor lie, not in the act of dismantling 8 years of trust. "It's not that serious," she said, her tone laced with a casual arrogance that made my blood boil. I pushed for answers, hoping, somehow, to find remorse. Instead, she dismissed me, claiming I was overreacting. Overreacting? To watching the life we built crumble under the weight of her deceit. Her detachment stung more than the betrayal itself. It wasn't just an affair. It was the realization that I was no longer a priority, not even in the fallout. That night, I packed a bag and left. I needed air, space, anything to escape the suffocating weight of her indifference. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Questions gnawed at me. How could she be so heartless? And why did it feel like this was just the tip of the iceberg? I had no idea that what lay ahead would reveal even more about the depths of betrayal and the surprising alliances I'd form. In my search for clarity, I found myself reaching out to Aline, Luciano's wife. At first, I hesitated. What if she didn't believe me? Or worse, what if she already knew and didn't care? But as I shared the evidence, every incriminating detail, I could hear the disbelief in her voice slowly turning into anger. She hadn't suspected a thing. Her world, like mine, had been shattered in an instant. What began as an awkward exchange quickly evolved into something unexpected. Aline wasn't just another victim. She was sharp, determined, and, like me, unwilling to let this betrayal define her. We started piecing the puzzle together, filling in the gaps left by their lies. With every revelation, our bond grew stronger. We weren't just commiserating, we were planning our next moves. In a twisted way, Sabrina and Luciano's betrayal had united us. Together, we felt less alone, less powerless. But there was still so much left unanswered. What would this alliance lead to? And how far were we willing to go to reclaim the dignity they had tried to strip from us? For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. Aline and I knew that confronting them directly wasn't enough. We needed to hit them where it hurt, professionally. Both Sabrina and Luciano worked in environments that valued integrity and professionalism, and their behavior had clearly crossed the line. Armed with our evidence, we reported their misconduct to their respective HR departments. It was a calculated move, and we knew it would shake their seemingly perfect worlds. The fallout was immediate. Sabrina was terminated after a swift investigation, her reputation crumbling alongside her career. Luciano, on the other hand, faced suspension, his once promising future now hanging by a thread. It wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability. Watching their actions catch up with them brought a sense of justice, though it couldn't undo the pain they caused. Still, the victory felt hollow. I couldn't shake the image of Sabrina, once so confident, now grappling with the consequences of her choices. And Luciano? His suspension only seemed to scratch the surface of the damage he'd inflicted. As satisfying as it was to see justice served, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that this was far from over. What came next? Only time would tell. It wasn't long before Sabrina came knocking at my door, metaphorically speaking. A string of texts, late-night calls, and messages filled with empty apologies flooded my phone. She claimed she had seen the light, that losing me had been her wake-up call. But her words felt hollow, like someone desperately trying to regain control of a narrative that had slipped through their fingers. Her fall from grace was as rapid as it was devastating. Without her job, her professional connections began to dwindle. I heard through mutual acquaintances that her once unshakable confidence had given way to uncertainty and regret. Still, every time I thought about forgiving her, I'd replay those moments of betrayal. How could someone who claimed to love me treat our relationship like it was disposable? And yet, despite her attempts at reconciliation, I knew I couldn't go back. The Sabrina I once admired was gone, replaced by someone I couldn't trust. It was painful to watch her struggle, but this was the path she chose. Meanwhile, I was beginning to see glimmers of a future where her shadow no longer loomed over me. Luciano's facade of confidence crumbled almost as quickly as Sabrina's. Aline, armed with newfound strength and evidence of his infidelity, decided she had endured enough. The divorce papers came swiftly, leaving Luciano cornered in a life he no longer controlled. His charisma, which once masked his lies, now worked against him as the truth spread like wildfire among colleagues and friends. Word at his workplace was that he had become a pariah. The suspension lingered like a dark cloud, and whispers of further indiscretions only fueled the tension. Aline uncovered even more betrayals, each one a nail in the coffin of his reputation. His attempts to spin the narrative were futile. No one believed him anymore. Watching him unravel from a distance was surreal, but even as he spiraled, there was no satisfaction in his downfall. I couldn't help but wonder if he truly grasped the damage he had caused. His world was falling apart piece by piece, and yet, a part of me questioned if he'd ever truly feel the weight of his actions. The damage was done, and both of us, Aline and I, were left navigating the aftermath. Picking up the pieces of my life felt impossible at first. Each morning was a battle against the weight of betrayal, the memories of what once was, and the lingering question of why. But slowly I started to rediscover myself. I deleted Sabrina's messages, packed away photos, and began carving out a version of me that didn't revolve around her. It was terrifying and liberating. With each step forward, the fog began to lift. I leaned into my work, poured myself into projects I'd neglected, and even rekindled old hobbies. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened, becoming a reminder of the lessons I'd learned. Trust couldn't be given blindly, it had to be earned. And dignity? That was something I refused to lose again. Aline and I kept in touch, but our paths diverged as we focused on rebuilding our separate lives. Still, her support had been a lifeline during those darkest moments, and I knew I wasn't the only one who had come out of this stronger. The scars of betrayal remained, but they no longer defined me. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. Sabrina's world, once glittering with ambition and charm, had become a shadow of its former self. The consequences of her actions seemed to follow her everywhere. Isolated from former friends and colleagues, she struggled to regain her footing. I heard whispers of her applying for jobs far beneath her qualifications, only to face rejection after rejection. It was a stark contrast to the confident woman I once knew. Luciano, too, faced his reckoning. Divorced, ostracized, and professionally sidelined, his charm could no longer shield him from the fallout of his actions. Aline had moved on, and from what I heard, she was thriving, reclaiming her happiness one step at a time. Their choices had caught up with them, leaving a trail of lessons that neither seemed ready to confront. As for me, I found solace in my own journey. While their paths spiraled downward, mine began to rise. I wasn't the same person I had been before all of this. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined to guard my heart. And though the pain of betrayal had marked me, it also became the catalyst for a life I never imagined I could build.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.